Three members were going to come from the MK Council, 3 from the veterans and stalwarts. As we are seated here, after that agreement, we have never met. We've tried to create conditions for meeting through all kinds of communications. The last communication that we received from the Secretary General was to say we were requesting for a meeting on Monday, this past Monday. We said, can we meet on Monday? And the idea was so that after we had met, we would come to this meeting of the veterans and stalwarts to report about what progress has been made between us as six-a-side and them as six-a-side. The Secretary General sent me an SMS in which he said the Monday will be too congested. So as it is now, we're still waiting to see how we can still institute that meeting. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Comrades. Wally, can I just say that I think everybody would agree that the events of the last week have had massive implications for our country and for the ANC. And I'm therefore going to ask Comrade Frank firstly to take us through the events that we still mourn. I mean, the death of Comrade Kathy Kathrada, and some of the important issues that arose coming out of that funeral. Comrade Frank.
Thank you, Comrade Faisal. I thought that we would announce the decisions of this meeting before I spoke about this matter, but let me speak about it. There are three critical things that happened in the last week or so, but this builds up from the time of the meeting with the working committee, that the delegation that went there, which Comrade Wali is talking about, got a message that indicated we do have a crisis, and it is a serious crisis. But the passing away of Comrade Kathy demonstrated the level of crisis we are facing. Firstly, the Minister of Finance was recalled to come back.
Right, we apologize for that break in feed, but basically hearing from some of the ANC veterans, they're meeting at St. George's Cathedral in Parktown. They're saying that they are concerned about the issues within the ANC, that they've been concerned about these issues. For the past 2 years, they've been trying to establish some sort of meeting with the top 6 of the ANC. And saying that despite numerous attempts, they haven't been able to do so. But their main concern is to restore the ANC to its former glory, to what it used to be. As soon as we get that link back, we'll take you there. I'm just being told we do have that link. Let's take you back to that veterans meeting.
And unfortunately, there was no acknowledgement or response to the letter. And then after the funeral, and the letter was referred to, a memorial service was organized, which was going to be an official memorial service. What happened thereafter was something that one could never imagine would happen. That you couldn't have a memorial service planned and postpone it or cancel it. I'm not sure about the actual language used, but whatever the case may be, it was a request or statement that says postpone your mourning. You are in the middle of a process of mourning, family, community, nation. And then you are asked, no, postpone it or cancel it. Now, you can't cancel a moment of mourning. And you can't say to the family, don't mourn. But I think the real crisis within the African National Congress is the fact that a leader of the caliber of Comrade Kathy, who's Isitwalandwe within the ANC, would have a funeral where the president can be present, or where the president is not interacting with the family. That demonstrates the level of crisis the organization finds itself in. It is unimaginable that that could happen within the movement. And that tells you that we have got a huge crisis in that movement. Then came the reshuffling of cabinet, which then worsened the situation as if the business of government was more important than the mourning that the nation was going through. And we thought it's important. We discussed it here. And there's deep pain about what happened. I remember that Comrade Kathy is part of this veterans group to try to find solutions to the problem. And this is how we went through the period of mourning. And we thought we need to state that we were deeply disturbed about what happened, particularly the postponement or cancellation of the memorial service in honor of Comrade Kathy.
Thank you, Comrade Frank. You know, the other important event that took place in this week of course, has been the President's announcement of his new cabinet and what followed afterwards. So I'm going to ask Comrade Cheryl just to take us through our understanding of what happened and the implications thereof. We need to move all of this.
Oh gosh. No, that's why you was at the podium. People can go there.
And the phones. We can't prejudice the more modern people who move around with mobile devices.
Should in the middle.
Thank you, Comrade Faisal. As Comrade Frank said, the funeral and the reshuffling of the cabinet were two very painful events for us as cadres of the movement to witness, and quite shocking. We were in quite disbelief. And there were a number of features that President Zuma crossed lines that is almost unimaginable of a loyal and a disciplined ANC cadre. Firstly, the fact that President Zuma decided to elevate the holding of a normal cabinet meeting over and above that of mourning with the family of Isitwalandwe is just breathtakingly shocking in terms of its callousness and the lack of feeling. The Kathrada family is a family of long-standing stature in the African National Congress. The wife of Comrade Kathy, Barbara Hogan, is actually an Mkonto Wesizwe soldier who served 10 years in prison. And the president to this day has not bothered to pick up a phone to either the family or the wife, who was a cadre herself, to offer his condolences. It is unheard of in the culture of the ANC, and indeed I would say in the world, no decent president or leader of an organization, especially of a movement like the ANC, could ever be thought to behave like that. And that's just an awful line that the president crossed. And then in terms of the reshuffling of the cabinet, even the manner in which the president recalled Comrade Pravin Gordhan seemed to almost speak to wanting to inflict maximum humiliation on a comrade. The president saw Comrade Pravin on the Sunday. Had he really not thought, did he really just wake up on the Monday morning with something and decided he's going to reshuffle his cabinet? We all know it couldn't have happened like that. He must have known on Sunday when he gave Comrade Pravin official authority to embark on his journey. So one just asks, why? Why do you let this man go? And then you let him land. And in full glare of the world, the callousness of it's almost as if you wanted to inflict ultimate humiliation. But perhaps even more than that, the fact that you do this with a total disregard for the fact that we know our country is watched, and often unfairly so, in terms of the movements of our government and behavior. We get judged sometimes on fairly spurious grounds. You're the leader of this country. You're the leader of the organization in charge of this country, and you have no regard for the kind of message that it would send when you recall your Minister of Finance who's about to meet key stakeholders. And this, by the way, this journey is in fact part of the detailed process that we as a country put our Ministers of Finance, and we expect them to do, in the build up to the next round of ratings. Because we understand the impact of the cost of a downgrade. Whether we agree with the downgrade, whether we feel it's warranted or not warranted. But there's just certain things you have to do as the Minister of Finance in your job description. You have to make sure that the markets and our supporters throughout the world understand what we're doing. And to let this man set up a range of meetings with key decision makers. And then these people make the time. Some of them have flown from outside of London and outside of New York in order to be there, and you just disrespect them. It's breathtaking again that the head of state and head of government can actually be so disregarding of the message it would send to key decision makers and supporters of our country in the manner that he does this. And then our president crosses another line, and that he uses the prerogative of the president. Well, perhaps we need to put that into some context. The president of the country becomes the president of the country because he is deployed by the African National Congress as a member of parliament in the first instance, and that makes him eligible as the president. It has never happened in this country, or indeed in any country in the world, any democracy other than some dictatorship, that some person just sits somewhere in a corner and decides to fire a whole raft of people, and then to appoint people to take responsibility to execute key programs of government, which in fact were crafted in the main by your party. The president this time is the first president in the history of our democracy to actually decide to delink himself completely from the highest elected office bearers in his organization, the African National Congress. The president decides he has no accountability to any of the structures of the ANC. And him in his jacket is going to make this decision. In our discussions here, we also said we know that nobody makes serious decisions like this. So the president is consulting somewhere. This man who is mandated by the ANC, and who in the past knows how we have appointed the cabinet. The Secretary General and the other officials of the ANC were in that room. And he decided they don't have a place. When he went and reported to them to say this is what he is thinking, and they said to him that they cannot support him. They think he is wrong and it is ill-considered. It's not in the best interest of the country or of the organization to embark on that journey. He just decided to actually defy them. This has never ever happened in the history of the ANC, that one person, and especially the president of the organization, will just take it upon himself to defy his comrades and proceed with a plan that they have in fact resisted. Then the president also decides to cock a snook at Parliament and at the Constitutional Court. In his decision in who he would appoint, in his appointment of two of these comrades, Minister Matabile Dlamini and Minister Faith Mutambe. Both of these comrades, the officials themselves had said to the president, if he wishes to reshuffle, they would then say he must take into account performance and execute that. Well, he ignored them because they in fact raised these underperformers. But more than the officials of the ANC, the Constitutional Court had found Minister Matabile Dlamini reckless, callous, and uncaring in how she had managed her portfolio. And he had asked that this matter be addressed, and in fact he went so far as to ask her why she should not have to pay for this vexatious lawsuit and costs, because she had acknowledged to the court herself that she had been negligent in the execution of a very sensitive portfolio that impacts on the most indigent people in our society. The president takes it upon himself, before Minister Dlamini has responded to the court asking her to explain herself, he decides to affirm her, notwithstanding this cloud hanging over her head that the court has pronounced on. Minister Mutambe, an ANC-led parliament, actually goes through a process and finds her wanting in the manner in which she has executed the responsibilities in relation to the public broadcaster. This has cost taxpayers money because it was a long, detailed, carefully thought through and managed process. And they make some findings about how she has conducted herself. The president not only decides to ignore them, he in fact decides to promote Minister Mutambe into an even more sensitive and responsible ministry, without any regard to the views that his comrades in the top six had expressed. And for us, this president has actually decided to take the role of the president of the country as one that is totally delinked and in defiance of his organization and the Constitutional Court and Parliament. And we believe that the ANC needs to take regard of this, because it's a very dangerous line and precedent that the president is trying to say the president of this country, who is put there by the ANC, is a law unto himself and in fact is fully entitled to defy the organization. We took a very dim view of this, and we expect the organization to do so too. Thank you, Comrade.
Members of the media, what we've reported so far.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Shame. You've become the chief marshal of the microphones here. You know, we all have responsibilities in life.
Let me start again. Members of the media, what we've reported on so far, you would all agree, requires deep consideration and discussion and reflection on where our journey has taken us this further in what we have put on to the ANC as well as to the public. I'm going to ask Lorraine Murphy a little bit to take us through the decision that's made this morning.
Okay, we do apologize for the break in that transmission there. We seem to have lost the sound. We'll try and get it back for you. Seems to be a problem from their side, though. So as soon as we get that link back, we'll take you back to that ANC Veterans Briefing live from Parktown. All right, let's take you back to that briefing by the ANC veterans.
Points that we've arrived at. In addition to that, there will be other points that are more informational, but also related to the work that the stalwarts and veterans have been doing, will still do going forward, over and above the conclusions that I will take you through just now. I think there is no mistaking the fact that we recognize that the country has reached a particularly critical juncture that actually also required us as the veterans and stalwarts, to pick up our pace a little bit. We're not quite juvenile anymore, but however, the moment and the time required us to really engage with this issue. You would have noticed from the previous engagements that you've had with us, I know that there are certain questions you kept on posing to us that relate to taking this action rather than that action. And we have consistently adopted a stance that has to convey the fact that we see our role as being essentially facilitative, and hence the approaches that we've been making to the leadership of the ANC. And I think that we've maintained a posture that makes it possible for anyone else, whether they are in the executive or anywhere else, could relate and speak to us so that there is access points for engagement on the issues that are important to everyone. And more, over and above anything, I think that even in our engagement with yourselves, we have conveyed an understanding of the role that a free and critical media plays and has to continue to play in our country. And that we respect. After all, we were part of the architects, members who constructed the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So in that way, we're not acting out of kilt with it. So in considering all of these issues that have been raised here today, we have identified the need for strong and clear leadership that is necessary and required in our country now. And also have noted the calls that are emerging now from the alliance partners, the SABC, COSATU, and we now know also of the journey of the Integrity Commission of the ANC in respect to this matter. And to that extent, the stalwarts and veterans this morning were quite unanimous in coming to the view that we align ourselves primarily with the spirit and the content of the message that Ahmed Kathrada had left us. And to that extent, would then connect our own position right now based on all of these developments that have been outlined, that they have left us with no other conclusion, notwithstanding our continued desire to play the role to facilitate, that the need to call on the ANC to recall the President of the Republic is now long overdue. And we fully subscribe to that view, and that is a unanimous view that the veterans and stalwarts came up with. And we focus on the ANC here. I know that other calls that Zuma must resign and Zuma must fall, but as ANC members and veterans and stalwarts, we focus this on the responsibility and accountability of the elected structures of the organization to do what they are empowered to do in the face of the developments and the events that have been described so explicitly as to the extent of contravention, not only of the Constitution, in fact, but also of the precepts of the ANC, as contained in the Constitution of the ANC itself, in terms of how the process of reshuffle and recall and the dismissal of ministers has taken place now. But importantly, the second point is a point that still keeps us on mission as veterans and stalwarts. That is that we will continue to pursue the call for the consultative conference. And in this case, our preference still remains that of having it delinked from the policy conference. And this is in keeping with our call. And we are putting it on record that if this process initiated with the ANC does not progress, we are in fact readying ourselves to consider alternatives to it. Because we believe that as an option, it actually is one of the options that presented the ANC with the best possible way in which to engage on these matters. And perhaps if we had done that, my suspicion is that, my sense is that we would not actually have gotten to this point where we are. But as the chair has indicated, there's prevarication, there's avoidance, there's kicking for touch, and all manner of things that suggest that either we are not taken seriously or, in fact, their belief is that there is no crisis. Now, I don't know how much deeper in the sand, as a leader, you can have your head in, not to recognize that ordinary people in South Africa, those of you who go to funerals, to weddings, can attest to the fact that that is a sentiment that people have there, outside there, that there is something terribly wrong in the state of the ANC, which is poisoning everyone else in the country. Now with the downgrade, not only that, we're all going to be poorer, but we'll still pay their salaries at the end of the month anyway. Point number 3, veterans as individuals would remain encouraged because, as you know, that there's lots of activities that have begun to take place. We want to make sure that we don't lose focus of what our essential mandate and strategy is as contained in our document for the sake of our country. However, we also have to recognize the fact that people are on the move. There is serious consternation, and as people who've been in the movement for many years as activists, we have a very clear sense of where the trajectory in terms of mass actions that are taking place is leading to. And therefore, we also recognize that some amongst us would be associated with those developments. And for us, as the stalwart and veterans, we are encouraged by this, by the exercise of people's choice to support activities of the Alliance of Patriotic Structures, because the point about them, they are not about the ANC. They are primarily about South Africa. They are about the constitution of the country. And therefore, anyone who senses that their constitution is being undermined have got all the right to actually go out into the streets, to protest, to campaign, to ensure that they protect the constitution. That is built into our constitution, the right for people to engage in these ways. Point number 4. There is a growing din of voices of our people who are acting in a disciplined way to express their dissatisfaction. And this we fully support, and that dealing with this blatant violation of the Constitution and the ignoring of the Constitutional Court, over and above the peaceful, or rather the approaches that we make as veterans and stalwarts, it should be possible, it should be correct that people utilize every democratic, peaceful way available to them to raise their voice so that those who are in power can hear them. And we support disciplined and principled action to ensure that our organization, the ANC, does the honorable thing in the end and recalls the president to make sure that we make progress and begin the process of rebuilding the organization and hopefully giving our country a break so that we can then seriously consider and look back at where it's gone wrong, and so that we ensure that we do not have a repeat of this going forward. So those are the key points that we've arrived at, but I should also alert you to the fact that there will be a number of other conferences taking place later on in April and May, one of which will involve the MK Veterans and Veteran Council and Veterans League, to which, in fact, as the stalwarts will be associated with. But all of those are part of the processes that people are taking on their own, especially in the absence of any clear leadership relating to this matter. It should be expected that people will take the initiative, and people as they must. And I think the Constitution, if it could speak, it would say it expects them to do nothing less to ensure its protection and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to, before I open up, there's one more issue. There is one Comrade Trevor who's sitting behind me to speak to, and it was a view that was also expressed in the meeting today, and that's around the formation of a commission of elders.
Why don't you make Trevor sit with you?
Trevor, do you want to come and sit here? Replace.
We don't have the musical microphone.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The issue that was agreed this morning is that there would be a committee, a council of elders, who are the senior comrades in the stalwarts and veterans, who would then meet with the top six to really understand how we got to the point that we are now, so that the ANC leadership is as factionalized as it is, but also to say that to prepare a report that would go to a special NEC that would address some of the issues that are raised, and in particular to hear firsthand what is happening, and also to meet with the caucus of the ANC in Parliament, and really find out why as Parliament that the ANC has not been able to hold the executive to account, as two constitutional court decisions have indicated. Both the President and the Parliament has not followed the Constitution. So that would be the approach, but the main question here is that we rise above the factions within the ANC and guide the ANC towards ensuring that it is able to lead our nation and in unison be able to achieve the goals that the stalwarts and the veterans and the ANC has always stood for, and that is to ensure a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic society that is biased towards the poor and the working class and the marginalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we come to the point where you are now allowed to ask questions. Sorry. Mary, did you want to? No, she's fine. Can I see your hand up. Can I first go to this side and then we'll come to that side? So let's take 5 questions from this side. You're just falling out of the middle, so I'm going to... how many hands do we have on this side? 1? Only 1? 2, 3, Okay, so let's start with you. Can you introduce yourself and where you're from?
Clement from Eyewitness. I wanted to ask if the reference is to compromises. I know that you're saying discussions will continue and the consultative conference, but the ANC seems to agree to hold the consultative conference, but for the first 2 days of the policy conference. And I hear you still want to argue and influence for the delinking of the two conferences. Would you be willing to compromise, or are you going to explore other options? And the ANC says this is the option we have for the first 2 days. The second question is on the motion of no confidence that I'm sure you know about. If it does